Welcome to Game of Nodes, a weekly podcast on the cosmos from independent validator teams.
Hello everybody, welcome to Game of Nodes, the podcast by independent validators of the cosmos. So today we are a reduced team here. Some of our colleagues, the Frey and Schultze, have incredibly poorly timed when they're going to be at shit internet, which they are at right now. So they tried to get on here and it didn't work out very well. So I think they're talking like, single digit megabits. It's unheard of. It's absolutely unheard of these days. So you're stuck with myself, Null, and we've got Usurper here. And we're joined today by Thyborg and Ghost from WhisperNode. So we also have fucked up and didn't make notes from last week to follow up. So we don't have any follow-up from last week, and it looks like we don't have any Ask On from this week. So as we're talking, if you guys want to ask questions, we can jot them down in our spreadsheet and we'll address them when we get to the end, or if they're relevant, we'll address them at the time. So anyway, Usurper's going to give an introduction to the project that Thyborg and Ghost have been working on, and it's been the subject of conversation a couple of times in the last few weeks. So I think today we're going to get a pretty good conversation on this particular topic.
Yeah, I think over the last few weeks, like as Null said, over the last few weeks, we've had a little bit more conversation coming up around governance in the cosmos. Can't talk. And it's come up both from a couple different groups that I think a few weeks before consensus, and then at consensus, there was a lot of different kind of separate governance related conversations that I had, and I think others had that were down there. And we were kind of sharing notes and those types of things. And around that same time, or a little bit before that, actually, there was a group that originally called the Validator Cosmos League. That is now just Cosmos Validators, right? Sorry. That Thyborg and Ghost, and I believe also Tom from EcoStake, kind of the three original the founders of that, and all these different groups that we've at least had some conversations with have had slightly different approaches to this, but being independent validators, and this group is being started by independent validators and others. This is the one I think that we've had a lot of conversations about, and has a huge amount of backing going around and a lot of conversation. So maybe I can stop talking. Maybe Thyborg or Ghost, you guys want to give a little bit of background in terms of how the three of you started talking about this, and kind of what kind of prompted this creation of this group, or at least starting to open the conversation up, and then maybe we can go from there.
Yeah, for sure. So I can start. Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I'm actually so the backstory. Maybe my backstory first. So I come from an economic background, but I've worked in tech for the last 10 years, and I sold one of my company recently. That was last year. And so I started, getting into crypto, actually spending time to understand how everything worked. And, I came across Cosmos. I felt that was a very interesting ecosystem to look into. But I actually, when I bought my first Atom, I kept them at Kraken for a while. And then after maybe a couple of months, I moved them on chain, but I staked them with UOB, right, for at least 6 months, which was great because I missed all the airdrops for Osmosis, for RHINO, for everything, basically. And I think that's a common experience, basically, that people move their stuff online or on chain, and they see a list of names, and they're going to pick the one that is the most recognizable, and obviously the one that is on top of the list. So that once you get into Cosmos more, you realize this is a very stupid thing to do, to put your stuff with Binance, Kraken, UOB. They have a high commission and they give you nothing. And as you go deeper and deeper, you realize they're not contributing either. So from that, I looked a little bit, what was being done to fix that, because I started to meet some validators that actually do stuff. Make things for the network, and realize I didn't see like there was any clear path to fixing that. So I started doing these Cosmos reports, and in the Cosmos report, being active on Twitter, I started doing some interviews with, I think I did in the end 8 validators, where they explained to me, how they got into Cosmos, where they were based, and also what kind of contribution they had made previously. So, Tom from EcoSake was one of these guys, and Tom is one of the big ones because he built a Restake, which is auto-compounder for staking rewards, which I don't know how many validators are using now, but that's a whole bunch. And I felt okay, well, there's something there. We can maybe the way I've been running things right now, and basically on my own, very subjectively, putting grades and ranking people in that way was not scalable and was not that useful. The threads were getting some attention, but not it was not going to be used in the long term, basically. And so Tom had been working on the Cosmos directory, which I'm sure you guys know about. It's extremely useful. I was super impressed to see what he had done there. And so we basically thought, okay, let's combine these two projects. Let's join forces. And Ghost was joined at pretty much at the same time. Like I think Ghost you can talk about that, but Tom and yourself had been talking about something similar. And yeah, we said, okay, let's define what we want to do. Let's define how we want to do it. We made a GitHub post that I shared online to explain, the goal, which would be to build a ranking. Initially, that started like that. Now, the project has a little bit evolved based on the feedback, but it started as doing a ranking where we would put, rank validators based on their contribution to the networks where they participate. So that would include two kind of data. One would be quantitative data, which would be based on number of votes, so participation in governance. That would be based on slashing events, missed blocks, all that on-chain stuff. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we want to include stuff that is a little bit more qualitative, and therefore harder to measure. And that means, for instance, stuff like the Restake app, stuff like Pokechoo is doing a state sync. Mm-hmm. Every validator has done some GitHub, some tool contribution, some they've built some tooling for the network that is being used by others, and we want to make sure that the general public knows about it. Yeah, so that's a brief intro. I think Ghost can tell you if I miss anything.
No, definitely. So my involvement with this kind of started pretty much around the same time that I threw out my Evmos post, and hopefully you guys can hear me okay. If not, I can kind of adjust. But the Evmos post about decentralization, and just that's been my biggest thing for a while now, is pushing decentralization. A lot of these chains, the Nakamoto Coefficient is like 4, 5, 6, so these top validators go down, the whole chain halts. It's a security risk. It's been a big issue that, it needs to be talked about, and we need to find solutions to it. And as a validator, we do have a few networks where we are top 4, 5, 6. And even then, I still push the same message of decentralization, even at, if it's going to affect us, that's fine. I would rather promote long-term, security and just longevity of everything versus own personal profit. I truly believe in the Cosmos and everything that it's trying to accomplish. And just, so when I kind of saw Thyborg doing these threads, and then between, Tom and his contributions and just various other validators and their contributions, it was inspiring. And I think my original inspiration for this really came back about a month or two in from when I first started validating. I started in November with WhisperNode. I think in December, I came across Bro and Bro's GitHub repo. They did like a gist, and it was this sort of, early like ranking system for validators, not just based on their VP, but also based on, just other qualitative like metrics. Like what are they doing outside of just validating? Are they contributing things? Are they building things? What's their, max commission rate set to? Are they building RPC nodes or, API nodes, like all this other stuff? So I thought about that, and I've always wanted to expand on that. So, just in the past month or two, it's kind of come up more and more, especially with Evmos really taking off. And we've seen over there how quickly that's blown up and how the top few have really gained a high foothold there. So it's just become a really important thing for me. And, even at the cost of our own selves, it's fine. I will continue to push the message. But we thought putting together a Discord, a community, a way for validators, foundations, teams, chains themselves, other, projects, analysts, contributors of the Cosmos as a whole, bringing them all together to kind of discuss these topics, gather feedback, and then find a way to use that feedback and create some sort of system, whether it was the scorecard, a ranking system, whatever, to provide to the community so that they had alternative ways to look at it versus just going to MintScan and seeing, okay, top 10, I'm always going to pick the top 10, because I feel like the safest bets. So that is, that's pretty much, my motivation for it is just really decentralization. This top 4, 5, 6 stuff, it hurts us all in the long run. Not just as validators, but the community as well. Everybody's putting their investments at risk. So,
for everybody listening, if it sounds like Ghost is talking from inside of a fishbowl, because he actually is talking from inside of a fishbowl, because you can't see this, but he's got the Ghost whisper. He's got a WhisperNode head on, and the mic shoved in there. What are you doing with that?
No, so I have my wireless earbuds in here. I've got the mic here, and then the camera hooked up top. If it's that bad, I can take it off.
It's not bad. No, it's not bad. So, and then you guys talked a lot about Evmos, because Evmos is, obviously it's a bit top heavy, right? I think the Nakamoto coefficient, which what we're talking about here, at least with the definition that I know of, is how many validators from the top down do you need to get to be above 33.33%, right? Or 30, whatever it is, right? 33.33, to be able to get to that point. So right now that number would, I guess, be 5, because 5 validators within Evmos is about 36.6. 4 validators is 32.91, which basically means those top 5 go down and the chain halts and we're stuck. Or even those maybe top two, in this case, 3 makes up almost 30%. So those 3 plus a couple down the list, and next thing you know, you're at that structure, right? It doesn't have to be just a top 5. And so obviously that, for folks who don't know, that's obviously not only a concern from a halt perspective, it's an uptime side of the house. There's a lot of things that kind of come to that large percentage, right?
Definitely. There's a few big standouts, like if you look at Kava's got a massive top heavy contingent there with those validators. And I think what's even worse is that it's a centralized exchange validator that's actually got that. And I think that's nearing on 30%. I haven't looked at it for a while, but I think from history, from when I previously looked at it, it was nearing on 30% of the network power in one validator at the top. I mean, if you look at the history of staking and staking habits, it's pretty clear that people from the outside looking in, without knowing too much about networks and the validators, come in and just, pick the ones at the top of the list because they're probably, perceived to be a safer bet in terms of slashing. So also, it's in our nature that bigger is better, and towards the top is considered to be the bigger one. So I guess for people who are listening who aren't too familiar with some of the issues that can happen when networks get too much power in 1 or 2 validators, might talk about that a little bit, because it's not, I think other validators, especially ones that are at the top, think that the concern of the rest of the validator community is that they're making all the money and no one else is. So, that is one factor, of course, but that's not the only factor. And, depending on who you are, depends on your motivations, really. But, at Kingnodes, we're concerned primarily about network health, but we also have concern, that we would like to make more money as well, of course. Mm-hmm. But so when it comes to network health, the problem is if you get too much voting power in just a couple of nodes. All right, so Todd has written in the comments here that on Kava, Kraken has 27% of the network and Malia has another 11% of the network. So what that means is that there's 38% of the network voting power in two validators, right? So to give an example, yesterday we observed, and I posted into one of our chats, that there was a situation where probably, I would say, 8 to 12 validators all started missing blocks at the same time. And, we speculated what that might be and landed on that it was probably a network outage either in a region or in a data center. And with potentially those nodes concentrated into one data center or region, then those nodes all went offline at the same time. So if Kraken and Malia on Kava are in the same data center and they have a network outage, then the network stops working. It'll just turn off because they've lost too much of the vote power. So network outage can span anywhere from a few seconds to a couple of days, depending on what the problem is. If someone's dug a hole and ripped the bloody, fiber cable out of the ground, then it could take days to muster some resources and fix that if they don't have redundant internet. So network health is a big issue when it comes to the concentration of vote power to a couple of nodes or even, 5 or 6. So that's our primary concern. And Thyborg and Ghost, have you guys, taken a temperature check from, other validators in the community about other effects of having concentrated vote power?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to give an example also, because not just the network can hold. A good example for me, and I posted about this on Twitter, was during the Terra meltdown, basically. A couple of, I don't know how many exactly they were, but, the chats were made public. And I read through these chats, and I think there was maybe 20 people participating 20 validators participating in there. There might be, a little bit more people talking in that chat. But between themselves, they decided that they would stop the market module on Terra, which, is the module that allowed for arbitrage between UST and Terra. And so Terra, I think that was like 12th of May. It was going straight to zero. And so a lot of people were shorting Terra, including me. and so, it was being printed like crazy. So there was no way Terra was going to go up. But at some point during the night, I guess these guys got together on the Discord, and they decided, for the health of the network. I mean, in that particular case, there was no collusion and there was no, intention to do harm, but that could have been the case. But they decided to just stop the market module. And so as soon as they did that, I think like Terra went up like 10,000x within like a couple of hours. And so for me, I was out of the trade, but I know, and I read actually just this morning that there was some big Korean VC fund that just got liquidated for 99% of their wealth on that particular night, right? So it's just an example of a case where another couple, it was probably a handful, maybe more, but at least a sufficient number of people got together and decided that they would do that, and they could have made themselves very, very rich. I mean, maybe they did. We don't really know. And made people very, very poor. So, it's a risk that I guess few people anticipate when they put their crypto on chain, and when they invest in crypto in general, that kind of stuff can happen, and that kind of stuff, will continue to happen if the networks are that centralized and it's not that difficult to implement.
So I guess when it gets dangerous on proof of stake, networks is when token gets cheap, right? So there was on Terra with the Terra Mania when it was all crashing. There was so Terra Classic we're talking about now. Obviously, there became a lot of abundant token at very cheap prices, and a lot of that was getting staked to validators, and the voting power was changing like mad. So, at that time, it was probably all happening too quick to be able to collude in that instance to, do something by voting that to benefit a few at the demise of others. But when you look at now at the moment, Osmosis and some of the other chains, you can see that there are individual wallets, I'll say, and I'm not going to say people, but individual wallets that are buying up a lot of token and staking them reasonably irresponsibly in terms of network health. So the other day we saw, what was there? We saw one wallet when it's breezy, man, would you mind turning your microphone off? So I think there was one wallet that used that bought and staked. I think it was about 2.5 million Osmo, right?
Yeah.
I think it was
something like that.
Yeah,
oh yeah, it was 6. That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
So it's 6 million, was it?
Something
Osmo?
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I looked at a couple of wallets there, and some of them staked them to a couple of different nodes. I think there was another wallet that might have been like 3 or so million staked, but to different validators. But there was like 3 validators or 2 validators or something that they staked to, and they were both in the top 5.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
It was number 1, number 2, and number 4 that they went to. 1, 2, and 3 that they went to, I believe.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily even the validators that are buying up cheap token and self-staking themselves to get to the top of the list, but people see those as safe bets and just stake their token of that instead of spreading it around all the validators, which would be the safer bet. All the prices are down at the moment, and it's an easy thing to do. So a lot of people think that because it's the token's on a market that you can't buy up a meaningful percentage of token without pushing the price up. Well, that's not the case. When there's a lot of sell pressure, you can certainly do that, and especially if it's in a SEX or if there's OTC facilities somewhere over the counter. For those who don't know the acronym, you can buy up a shitload of token when they're cheap if you've got the money, and then you can basically control the network. So those massive wallets that do that, some people say, if they diversify their staking, then that improves the network health. It does in terms of the network's health. In terms of the network's viability and long-term health, having a lot of tokens under the control of one person is not very good, because whilst they might stake it to a lot of different validators and people believe that diversifies the voting power, at the end of the day, that one wallet controls the voting power, not the validators.
Right.
So it's also still dangerous in that situation. So have a look, see if we've got any good questions here. Callum's been saying a few things.
So for you guys, obviously this problem is a couple different things. One you originally talked about was really more around education, right? That people were just picking whether it's what's easy or they're picking the top 10, which is really that's a delegator decision. Because even when I got in this type of thing as well, you just blasted with 100 or 150 icons, right? And they're ranked. And so obviously there's some UX here in UI that actually is driving some behavior around specific things, right? And I've called out like MintScan on why they put the top 10 in a different color and just things like that, right? Like there's some things in the UX UI perspective that I think inherently drives people to pick the top 10. I've seen things on Reddit threads around, anything, in the bottom third is extremely dangerous because they get slashed more and things like that, which doesn't make any sense, right? There's no relationship here at all between, I've said this before on Twitter, there's not much relationship between competence and position because I'm number 9 on Stargaze. And so that clearly shows that lack of, what I mean is totally incompetent. But So that's one piece of it, right? So that's an education thing that you guys can do. We can do either by, like you said, like trying to find UX type of things where I want to be able to provide either data on chain or off chain to be able to allow intelligent delegators to make right decisions around where to be able to stake, right? And take safety, and because right now it's kind of like, here's a rank of 1 to 100, it's all based on safety, which is totally not true, right? And so now we want to take these other kind of contributions, other types of things, right? So I think that's a valid. Did I encapsulate that well? That's a valid type of and very beneficial structure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most of the centralization issue can be solved through good UX, and that's that's everywhere, right? It's not just Kepler. It's also Omnifex. It's also Cosmos Station, Evmos. In fact, they all had the same list that is weighted by a number of delegations. Obviously, they all face the same issue, and so we can fix that in just one go by providing. So there's two things there. One is the original idea was to provide a list. So that's that's our list. We're going to make the criterias. We're going to make the parameters of the ranking and the weights voted on by the validators themselves. So we don't take control over everything. And this is a list that you guys can use if you want. And actually not just for the staking interfaces, but also the delegation programs run by the ICF, run by Ignite. These guys are huge orders. And so they have a big weight. They have a big say in the way the tokens are being distributed, and they can help tremendously, pretty fast, with the centralization issue by just changing the way they deal with that.
Right.
Another group of people that have quite a bit of power there are these liquid staking providers like Lido, like Persistence. I'm missing one probably, but there's a couple of liquid staking providers right now, and there will be more in the future. So these guys, not all of them. I know Quicksilver doesn't do a whitelist validators, but most of them do that. And so if we provide them with good data about who contributes to the network the most, then they can take that into account in when they do their whitelisting and basically push up the small community validators that are actually active. So. That's that. At the same time, so the main feedback we got from that Discord, which was useful, was that a ranking is a ranking, and we're going to be a small group of people deciding on what the parameters are, and we're going to have outsized control on too much money, basically, because if we put that particular guy first, that particular guy is going to get a ton of delegation from people. Like, at least that's the expectation from putting that particular validator on top of the list.
Mm-hmm.
So what we decided to do instead is being a data service, in the sense that we would gather the data, both qualitative data and quantitative data, and we would provide that data to others, third parties. So that could be delegation programs, liquid staking providers, the users themselves. Mm-hmm. And they would, basically weight that data the way they see fit. And so that way we would end up with more than one ranking. We would, as the Cosmos Validator group, we would have our own ranking, which would be based heavily on contribution, but anyone can do something different. So if you're liquid staking providers, maybe you want to put the focus on uptime, for instance, or lack of slashing, or number of misblocks. Like you can weight the ranking the way you think that benefits most your products. And so that's a big pivot we took, and that's the direction we're taking now.
And then that I think makes a absolute ton of sense. And then you also have the other part of this, which is not just UX, but people are just delegating because of free shit, right? Then you have the whole free shit thing. What the free shit is like Evmos, I think is a huge free shit type of ranking there, and people have promised things, or they're a future token or an NFT drop or this or that. Hell, I'm part of that too, right? So I mean that the free shit moniker kind of fits. That's a huge piece of this that's driving that as well, right? And so I think where I'm going with, and I assume you guys agree with that, right? And then regardless of how much education there, it's just a race to how much free shit you can give away.
Yeah, so we've been thinking about the free shit problem, and we want to offer a solution to that. We want to gamify the ranking, in the sense that each user, each wallet, in fact, would get a delegation score, and the delegation score would be based on how you've put your stake with respect to the recommendation, basically, of the ranking. And so if you've been splitting your stake, if you've been using the validators that will show up at the top, meaning the people that deserve it the most. Also, just a small note on that, deserve it the most will be, dynamic in time, because we want to make sure that even though you might be a great contributor, the goal is not just to replace the top with another top. So we'll weight your place in the ranking based on your number of delegation and how much you need them, basically. So if Cosmos Spaces, for instance, they're doing great work for the community. They are very active there on making sure people understand how the Cosmos works. If they are at the bottom of the list by delegation stake, they will probably be on top of the list by contribution stake, and so people will be able to delegate to them first. And so if you follow these guidelines, you will get a delegation score, and that delegation score is something that we want to make public. And any project that care about decentralization, we want to basically do some business development, you can call that, and tell them, okay, you could use that in order to weight your airdrop, in order to promote decentralization. Try, to favor a little bit more the people that have a great delegation score. So you as a user, you come in, you check the ranking, you see that you are at 10%. So that's a very low score. You haven't been doing great. You're going to be incentivized to basically increase your delegation score, get to 80%, and get maximum airdrop from projects that are interested in helping us with that.
Okay. Ghost, you guys, I thought you were leaning in there to say something too.
No, sorry. I was reading one of these comments from Adam. Sorry, it's kind of hard to see out of this, so yeah, no, like it's kind of foggy. But so if it's the former, I don't see why it would be unreasonable to rate, limit, or cap validator delegations. So this is an interesting one. I know Ping.pub and I believe Chill Validator's fork of Ping.pub. Mm-hmm. They do something where, depending on the network, there will be like this number next to the delegate button every day for each validator, and it'll say, okay, this validator has already received, say, 1,000 tokens in delegations today. Consider delegating to another validator. I think that's a pretty reasonable approach as well, and it's another UX issue, of course. I totally support something like that. I've also heard other people say, well, why don't we cap validators? No matter what, they can no more than control 5% of the network at, any one given time. And after that, they're no longer able to be delegated to. I think there would be issues implementing that. Of course, there would be, public outcry, whatever. I don't see that necessarily working. I believe that the solution really lies in education and just giving the community the tools, platforms, and just the ability to see the data for themselves. Now, of course, not everyone is going to use these or even know about them. Like you said, when you first joined the Cosmos, when I didn't know about half of this. I didn't even know staking with a centralized validator, or a SEX would exclude me from airdrops, or they would get the airdrops and I wouldn't,
Ghost,
so it does take some time.
Before you get too farther down the line, I would like to talk a little bit more about what you just mentioned with having staking caps built into the network, because we've been talking about this lately, particularly on RHINO in Core 2, and we're putting up probably a proposal on Commonwealth soon. And I'm thinking about writing a paper on it, because social education is one thing, but it doesn't control outliers where whales just stake willy-nilly, right? So we were looking at potentially implementing a staking cap that is like a percentage of available VP that has a governance controllable parameter for the multiplier of, so what the maximum cap would be is affected by the multiplier. So we've been talking a bit about that lately. So what is the feedback you've gotten from people, and what are your thoughts about how that could be a negative thing for a network rather than a positive? and how, like, could it not work in conjunction with staker education and, like a platform like you guys are talking about? Because you have to understand that, like, the only, in my opinion, the only real way to control staking weight is to do it at a network level because of all of the different UIs and avenues into actually doing staking. So have you got any more further comments on that?
Yeah. So I think the issue with doing it at the network level is it's going to be easy to game the system for validators. If you look at Ethereum, for instance, they've tried to do that, and what you end up seeing is big validators that just create multiple nodes. Right?
So Sybil attacks, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, even with a Sybil, it's better than having it in the one place. Like, you can still use like the staking UIs that you guys are talking about, and obviously, if someone's doing a Sybil, then that would not work out in their favor as far as your staking UI is concerned. However, in terms of network health, a Sybil is probably better than one validator having a lot of vote power.
I don't think it's better, because if you have a really big entity behind, half of the network node, that entity just does whatever it wants with the network, basically. So, maybe that.
But if that one entity can get, what's the fear that they're going to be able to get more delegations with more nodes? Like, if they all say Binance staking, right, then they're going to have their supporters, and if it's spread over 10 nodes or one node, the only difference is that it pushes out other nodes. But it's overall, I think, better in terms of network health.
If we're looking at it from purely a network health standpoint, in terms of nodes going down, data centers, whatever, potential chain halts, yes. Obviously, it's still, if it's one person controlling 10 nodes and maxing out on each one, that's still the issue, an issue of essentially, an entity controlling a large amount. But this is where I feel like having some sort of community watchdogs, which we clearly already do. I mean, people are writing up all these great threads, doing all this research, kind of tying wallets together, see who's doing what's shifting where.
Yeah.
This stuff's been called out before, and I believe it continues. It needs to continue, absolutely. And validators that are doing this sort of stuff, sibling, they should be called out, because you are pushing out other potentially great operators from the ecosystem, and it is another centralization factor. But like I said, going down to just purely network health, yes, it would be better. But overall, I still don't think that's the right answer. I feel like having, some sort of cap on the limits could be good. And there was an interesting one, and I'm going to take this over to Osmosis. I believe it was Leonor's Crypto Man a couple months back on Commonwealth proposed this sort of system where there would basically be baseline commission paid out daily to every validator in the set, up to a certain point. And then, like if you were, say top 33% or whatever, there would be incentivization for people to actually delegate to the lower ones, a small multiplier, say, 5%, 10%, whatever, if they delegated to a validator that was lower on the charts.
I think that would provide financial incentive for sibling.
And that's where, it all comes back down to how do we get past the civil and at the same time even things out, of course. So, and that's why there was pushback on that. But I thought, if there was some sort of way to evolve on that, continue to at least discuss the idea and get more feedback.
So I think Sybils would self-regulate themselves if you're just limiting stake, because if you publicize that Sybil bad, right, then, those, if there's 10 Binance staking validators, they won't take off. They would just, people won't delegate to them because they go, well, these guys are clearly sibling, and you can control that as well in your staking interface. But it does stop any one validator from getting too much voting power, like any one node.
Yeah,
I think there's technical network health and there's governance network health. And in general, I think it is going to be a bad thing for the same entity to control multiple nodes. And if you put a cap on stake, you're going to get that. In general, I think the way I think about blockchain is this.
But hang on, why would? So I'm just confused as to why we're going. If there's multiple nodes, they're going to have more voting power than what they would if they had one. We're just leaping straight to that for some reason. So if the governance is from the stake tokens, right? So if that stake spread over 10 or 1, then it's they've got no more or less voting power. But ultimately, the voting power lies with the staking wallets anyway. So if those people are educated in voting, then it doesn't matter how much stake the validator has in terms of governance. They can try, but all it takes is some communication with the public, and they're unlikely to be able to do anything unless they own the tokens, in which case it doesn't matter whether they stake it to their validator or another, because they still control the vote anyway. So,
but if you imagine one entity that is able to do that, to split in their stake into different nodes, you also give the incentive. You can expect that these guys are going to accumulate more power, because if they have more nodes on the network, naturally some more people are going to delegate to them without knowing that this is the same entity. So I think the end result will be these guys will have more power at the end of the day, not less, by splitting.
So there's absolutely nothing. If that was the case, then there would be more Sybils now, because at the moment there's absolutely nothing from stopping anyone from doing that anyway. So
at the moment, the network is very unhealthy. No, go ahead.
If that was going to be a more profitable approach, people would do it now. And some people try, except at the end of the day, the reality is that no one stakes to the bottom anyway. So, they can't really Sybil and get any more meaningful amount of stake. And if they call it the same brand, if they use the same branding, then people will know they're Sybiling, and then people don't like that. So they wouldn't. And that's, as a community, that's frowned upon. So
okay, right. What's the solution then that you want to suggest for the cap? Like, what do you have in mind?
There's no one good solution. I'm just being the devil's advocate and debating the available solutions, right?
Yeah, so, I want to understand your solution to it. So you want to put a cap, and beyond that cap, you cannot get more stake.
Yeah, so you're talking about core 2, right?
Okay, so what we have talked about, and to be honest, we haven't landed on anything. We argue about it ourselves at the moment because we're trying to land on we haven't even put up the proposal in Commonwealth because we want to research the effects on things before we go and start actually talking about doing it on the chain, right? So it's a matter of looking across and getting expert opinions from people from all over the network and different developers and different network founders, and try and determine what the possible effects of doing this might be, right? So my proposal was to have a limit on the amount of stake based on multiplier so say if you had 100 validators, right, and there was 1,000 tokens staked, then divide 1,000 by 100, which gives you 10, and then have a multiplier, which is a governance controllable parameter of what the maximum can be. So maybe it's 5. So the top validator can have 50, right? 5% of the network or something like that. So at least it's controllable. But what that would mean is that then if they already had more stake than that, so say if the amount of validators was changed via governance from 100 to 50, right? Because, I don't know, maybe the network's not going so well and it's not economically viable for the lower validators, and you want to tighten up the set, right, to the good ones or something like that. or just maybe there's network performance issues or something. You want to tighten up set, right? So say you end up with then 50 validators, that would mean that the top validator would have 10% of the vote. It's not going to force undelegate anyone. It just means that until, that becomes down to 5% again, people can't delegate to it. So, and that wouldn't limit the amount of rewards that they get. They'd still get the 10% of the rewards distributed to their stakers. It just means that people can't, like every time you try to delegate to, you just get a message that says that you can't delegate here. There's already too much voting power. So that was just one solution that I thought of, and people have definitely raised issue with it, as you guys have. And we definitely need to do more research around, the different social aspects of it, as well as any detrimental network effects that it might have. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's basically what we don't want to lose is the incentive for validators to be great validators. So if you implement your solution and it's easier to just create multiple nodes and to be a great validator, then it's a problem. But if you weight it just the right way, so that you have a combination of both. Basically, you have the education so that people have the incentive to be great, to keep doing what Pokechoo, EcoStake, Cosmos Spaces, all these guys are doing, and at the same time, you put a cap on how much you basically prevent the Nakamoto coefficient to be too low. Then then we're talking about a solution that takes into account the two sides of the equation. Guys, I'm gonna have to go. I'm sorry. This is a very interesting discussion, but I have another call right after that. So it was great to talk to you. I hope we do this again, maybe. And yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks a lot for coming on.
We definitely need to keep talking about this as a community as well. So interested to have more discourse on that terrible place, Twitter, and also in your Discord. So, yeah. To be clear, I'm not shooting down any ideas. I'm just talking about the different avenues. So
yeah, no, of course, and I think that's very important.
And thanks for coming on, Thyborg. I know you got to go, mate. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care, guys.
Yep.
All right.
Cheers. It's a tough problem because you want to, I think as Thyborg said, you want to be able to ensure that validators are contributing or that are earning, obviously you're putting time in and effort in. You want to make sure that they can profit from that, right? I just don't know. It'd be interesting. I like this idea. I like the cap idea. I think it's interesting when you get into things like even look in Juno. And I also really always love Juno because it's the chain that takes chances and wants to kind of like there's nothing sacred, right? Just because something is that's what I really like about it.
Yeah, but like we can shift the norm there. It's not like
you can, right? And you can always return it, right? Like nothing here is permanent. I don't think in any sort of sense. Well, maybe depending on how you transition this into that group might be somewhat permanent. But if you look at Cosmos Station on within there, like right now they have about 7.9%, 8%, let's say. And so if that cap limit turned into be 4%, like null based on your math, right? Or whatever that was, maybe it's 4 or 5%. Like, are they, if they're contributing and if they feel that there's a limit on how much can happen on Juno, does that chain then turn into not as important in the wallet? Like maybe they don't market as much, or maybe it doesn't show up there. Maybe it's something else where they have 25% because they know that when I hit the button to stake, it comes that way, right? Now, does that in the end, does it make that much of a difference? And is that the group that we're trying to be able to protect? I don't know, but I think the idea is at least the idea of being able to take somebody who's contributing and chop that down to say you contribute, but you can only contribute this much, or as much as you contribute, this is the max that you can earn out of that, right? That's tough, I think. But again, I don't know if they're like if that's a good example of something we're trying to change, or if it's something else. Like a different type of validator that might have a large percentage that we think is just more dangerous, right? Like that's maybe going back to the Kraken example.
So, yeah, I mean, I do kind of, so the thing is, right, if you create a good wallet with all this information and, people can get that information and make informed decisions, or the point system and all that type of stuff, right? You have to get adoption of that wallet. Otherwise, it means nothing. If
right.
You make the wallet and people still use, Kepler staking interface, then it's still going to be the same on Kepler unless you sort of talk to them and get some buy-in and get them to maybe implement through an API or something similar solutions or based off this external solution. But I mean, in my mind, if it's not and I've said this before when we were talking with Osmosis the other week, Usurper, if it's not at a network, if you can't find a viable solution at a network level, then you're really passing control of the how it's presented to people to someone else.
Yeah.
And that is a very central way to do it. And that, everyone has to build the UXs and the UIs, and people can make different decisions around their own motivations, right? And, at the moment, say it's a collective building this interface, and that might consist of, WhisperNode, Thyborg, and EcoStake, and they might all be very great people right now, right? But say next week, EcoStake wants to buy a mansion, and WhisperNode has all of his UST go to zero, and they need to make some money. What is to stop that additional motivation then, like incentivizing them to modify their algorithms to get them some more money by pushing themselves to the top? Or, and this is nothing against Disperse, but they had a wallet that I believe was like one of the first wallets to be able to stake on Evmos with Ledger, right? I'm not 100% sure about that, but it's a pretty popular staking interface for Evmos, right? And for the longest time, and I'm not sure if this is still the case, they put themselves at the top of that list, the same as Ping does and the same as Cosmos does in the Cosmos wallet, right? Which, if you have a popular wallet, is very effective. Because if you look at Evmos, you'll see Disperse is right up there with
number 2,
Cosmos Station and Orbital Apes. So and the rest of them. So you had something to say on that?
Yeah, the problem there, and I mentioned something about this the other day, was that they were highlighting other top 33%ers with this red flag that if you hovered over it said, hey, support decentralization, delegate to other validators, but they didn't have the flag next to their own name, and they are number 2, which to me seemed a little strange.
So correct. But they fixed that, right?
They've since fixed that. That's correct. But I caught that and I thought it was interesting. I did a few random refreshes. I tried different browsers, and I thought at first maybe they had some sort of just every time you refreshed, it was like randomized the lists, because it wasn't ranking by default when you went to visit by your VP. It was just like completely random unless you selected one of the filters in their top right. But every time I refreshed, no matter what, WhisperNode showed up at number 112, and I thought that was kind of funny because we're like number 40, number 39, and our uptime's good. So I was curious how and why that, what the rationale behind that was. And then I had other people check that out, and they confirmed the same thing.
Not enough entropy.
Right. And they had mentioned that they were trying to follow in Cosmos Station's steps, footsteps with their wallet, which I went and checked their wallet. I didn't see anything different other than just the owner of the interface, Cosmos Station themselves being number 1 and then VP down. So I just, since then, it seems like it's completely randomized now. They do mark themselves with the red flag, which, I believe that's it was a good move on their part. It's honest, and they're still actually growing. So that's they've made a good decision there by trying to do the right thing. But it goes back to that whole thing is the owner can absolutely decide. There's that internal bias of whenever they want.
Yeah, well, you always look out for number 1, right? Number 1 being yourself, but. So, I mean, even no matter how much of a nice person you are, if you're in a pinch, you're going to look out for number 1. So,
and that's why we wanted to do the collective, of everybody in the ecosystem in on it together.
I understand the model. It's just that at the end of the day, it is still basically controlled by a few people. No matter how many people have a say in it, someone controls. There's going to be an admin or two in the GitHub repo, and then they basically control the platform, right? So I don't know how to say it. I'm going to say Gains Alex because that's the way the phrase says it to me.
Yeah, that sounds correct from the way it's spelled.
If it's not, it's the phrase problem.
Yeah, it's the phrase problem now. It's not mine anymore. I just made it. But anyway, to be fair, you raised that question, and he responded within like a few hours, and then the next day it was fixed, right? That was about the time.
Yeah, it was completely. Yeah,
that's good.
It's totally random now. Like I refresh and it's totally random every single time now. So,
do you think they were standing on you, pushing you to the bottom?
I mentioned the comment that I felt like we got blackballed, and the reason I felt like that is because of my constant pushing. My posts about Evmos, like top 4, controlling 33.02%. I mean, that post is still being retweeted and shared around, not as much, but it's still getting traction, and it got a lot of attention. And Evmos themselves commented on it. One of the team members saying, "All right, how can we approach this problem and try to resolve it?"
That's a lot
we've seen with
when I mentioned the friggin' vote weights in. I wrongly went straight after OA and just got smoked.
I think initially I did, and it's not like it was something personal. It was literally just the model. Going back to the free shit model. I mean,
free shit model.
But free shit to the point where, oh no, we need more. I mean, now we just saw them enable restake. 2 days ago? Like, we didn't have enough. Now we need more, or we were losing 0.2%. So now we need to get that. And they have, since they've enabled it, they've gained back what they lost and more.
Growth at any cost, right?
Yeah. So, and hey, it's open source. It is what it is. That was the whole point of it. Anybody can use it. That's part of the network. That's, that was one thing that I really appreciated about Tom's work on everything he's built so far, is that it's open source. It's open to everybody. There's no
the top right.
So rules.
Here's the thing. EcoStake at the top on restake.app, right? And the only reason people fork that and create their own one, and Ghost is absolutely guilty of this, WhisperNode, is to put themselves at the top, right?
Absolutely.
I don't bother because I'm bigger than that.
See, no, my thing was that I don't have a problem if you put, if it's your platform, I don't have a problem if you put yourself at the top. My problem was not flagging themselves as being part of the top 33%, but flagging the other ones and then throwing them at completely random positions. That was my gripe.
I am being a little bit.
No, I know you're giving me shit, but that was my thing, was just the flag issue. It's like, because I saw, it had OA at like number 23. It had, I don't know who's number 3. I can't remember, but it had them at like 60. It just had them at random spots, but it wasn't random because when you refreshed, it was just static every time. So.
Yeah. Speaking of losing out the free shit, Evmos Guardians, I'm losing out. Those guys have jumped up significantly, and that's also out of nowhere, right?
They played us, Ghost. They played us, man.
They played us, yeah. So here's a funny little thing about Evmos Guardians. Yeah, they approached us. I think it was about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago. Right when Evmos finally picked back up and was starting to become a thing. Mentioned an NFT set, offering us, whitelists to give away to our followers, and personalized NFTs for us, which we just gave away anyways. So we did it, and this was only the second one we've ever done for any network. The other one was Meta Chihuahua, back when Chihuahua was worth something, and they never mentioned anything about having their own validator. You know, I didn't know they were either at the bottom or just inactive but still voting. If you look at their voting track record, they've only missed 2 votes, so they've been around since day 1 pretty much. And then now all of a sudden, they're blasting past everybody, and even OA was losing delegations to them. So that's why I feel like that restake move came, because it was like, okay, well, if we're going to start losing market share, then
at least I like the orbital apes artwork is okay. This stuff, I don't know.
Look,
no comment.
No comment.
The internal comment was that we are no longer going to ever participate in any of these NFT giveaways or collaborations. You know, we've had like 4 others approach us since then, and we've turned them all down. I just said, no, I'm sorry, we're not into like cherry picking or any of that.
Yeah, so we are the same way, right? When in the past, when people have approached us for NFT giveaways, we say we're happy to give away your whitelists, but we won't give it to just our delegators, right? We say we'll give it to anyone who participate, and going along that line. And it's not like I don't even if I do it, I don't even I try not to make people have to follow me or anything like that. I just say like whatever. Yeah. But this is a lesson for us, and I totally agree with your sentiment, WhisperNode, and we probably won't do any more either, because we basically, I feel, seeded a community to someone who has gone and done the thing that we don't like.
we hoard ourselves out and then, literally gave power to the exact thing that we're trying to prevent. So,
but we did it at, we did it thinking that we were, doing good for ourselves. So we have to look at that.
We totally own it, and I agree.
And if we change our practices in the future, we can do that knowing that we fucked up. And at the end of the day, if that's the business model they want to roll with, we just have to accept that. And hopefully we can all agree on some sort of controls in the future. But there's nothing. We thought we were done. This was in the past after we managed to, like, across a lot of networks, get a minimum commission implemented, and taking the high road on minimum commissions with it not implemented on networks is certain death to yourself. Yeah. But we do it anyway because, we want to do what's right for other validators. Other people don't give a fuck. So at the end of the day, the victor goes to people who don't give a fuck. And just do whatever's in their best interest, right? So, we we know that going in, and unfortunately, it's going to be like a weight around our ankle when other people come in and just do the things that we sort of don't do because we think it's bad for the network. But you can't control that, and it's their choice, and it's a decentralized universe, and they can do whatever the fuck they want.
Right. Yep, exactly. And it just comes down to, sticking with your own morals and ethics and what your team believes in. And that's just what we've decided internally moving forward. We are going to be opinionated, but we're also going to stick to a code of, this is just how we're going to do on every network. And regardless of what anyone else does, this is just our code of conduct internally.
I think there might be, we had a couple of conversations before, I think, when Sonny was on, and some other ideas around some other ways to, like, kind of skin this cat, right? I think the other one thing that Sonny mentioned before, I think people forget about, is the idea of easily staking to multiple validators. It always kind of seems like it's I fucking dump everything in Orbital Apes, even though I need 10 Evmos to earn a mint or something, right? Like there's no necessarily massively high bars here in terms of stake. And so, like, and maybe it's the pain in the ass of having to collect and then, redelegate. And so maybe there's some UX UI work there similar to restake, but not necessarily all chains obviously support Auth-C and those types of things. And not everybody understands that. And some people just do not like that idea, which I totally get. Like, I'm with that. And so maybe there's something core to how this process happens where I can pull rewards and instead of just having to staked to one validator in that, I can pull rewards and then just distribute it back out based on what I have staked, right? Some sort of way I can do that manually, kind of similar to what Tom and EcoStake is doing from an Auth-Z perspective, right? Because I think maybe some UX work in there, and that would be core. Then maybe we have the idea of and Sunny brought up the idea of like validator groupings, where I might have sets of validators that kind of subscribe or are grouped together based on some sort of ideal, or maybe based off of like we're pushing right now into this wildlife fund, which I'm building, and also like what Tom's doing with EcoStake in terms of like driving that into be like a zero carbon footprint type thing. Like there might be some things that you could do in kind of like picking validators from different groups to build a portfolio. And so, and maybe that's a better solution to all this. I think the cap thing is really tough because then you get in this situation, even with these NFT drops and whatever else, then you have this race to get into that. And like, I don't know.
You'll probably see more projects just doing NFTs then, because
you would, right? Because now, I keep picking on apes, but like now instead of having all this type structure, now there's 17 other NFT drops and they're all at 4% because now it's not a popularity contest, right? Now it's not how good your marketing is. It's just, I can get something else out there. And now I'm not competing against them anymore because they're maxed out. So if they're maxed out, then now it's a brand new open area. I don't need to compete as much, blah, 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 blah. Right. So now I have, to your point,
just
like exactly goes, you have 15 of these projects, right, that start because it's so much easier to be able to kind of get in that piece. So I don't know what this overall solution looks like, but man, what a tough problem.
It's difficult. And, that's why like this approach and trying to get, the big goal here has to been like bringing in more teams and more foundations and just everybody in together so that we can get this collective feedback. Yeah. And I'll name drop here, but when Putmos first joined, he was very adamant about it coming off as like a cabal with, league in the name, just like this power hungry group trying to steal power from those that already had power. So, with a lot of discussion in the Discord and a lot of great feedback from many people. That's where that revised model of, okay, it's no longer going to be like a ranking scorecard. It's going to be more of a service that just shows, hey, this is what people are contributing. Right. Choose based on that. And I love the idea of, like you just mentioned, that, Sunny said groupings or, based on your beliefs or what they're contributing, you build a little portfolio and it literally just spreads your stake out through them. Yeah. Boom, done.
Yeah. And I think that whole thing, like just staking to one validator, I'm not sure if people understand that you can do that multiply. I'm not sure if it's just the UX of it being a pain in the ass, because it is a bit of a pain in the ass, right? I'm going to take 20% here, 10% down here. But once you collect, it just dumps in the wallet, right? I can't, then I do the same thing again. Okay, then what's my low on and blah, 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 unless you're using obviously Auth-Z and Restake, which is kind of what he's been doing. Todd just said if the liquid staking groups did what I was talking about, instead of focusing solely on profit, it would benefit the networks. Yeah, I don't know.
But it's interesting because, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so while we keep talking, guys in the chat, please ask questions if you want us to talk about anything before we wrap up today, because we've probably got about 20 minutes left before we get to the outside of where we should be. We've discovered that people don't like to watch us talk shit for 3 hours. It's more like an hour and a half. So yeah. People don't got all day, man.
Right. That's right.
But, I got nodes to build, man. But
yeah. Well, I could talk all day. It's like that. It's easy to put off work and do things you like talking to people, right?
Yep.
And then you just have to fucking do it later. So
yeah, no, when everyone's asleep.
Yeah, when you're eating pizza and drinking whiskey at 3 a.m. So actually, what have we got here? We don't have any questions, but Adam Burke did mention a while ago. He said, I believe Cardano has a similar soft cap concept to your idea, Null. Basically, after validator goes beyond the saturation level, I'm putting that in, all delegators can earn less rewards versus delegating to a validator under a saturation. So the more the more rewards you get, the more delegators you get, the less rewards they get over a certain level, by the sounds of things.
That's interesting. So that kind of sounds like Leonor's idea with the osmosis, where there's like that curve, delegating to smaller validators would give you more rewards versus delegating to a higher ranked validator or, just someone who has more VP.
And Sonny
so it's like a quadratic solution, I guess. Yeah.
Right. And Sonny had that idea, like the other half of that would be that maybe the larger the validator or the more percentage of VP, the deeper the slash cuts are. So if somebody gets slashed, and maybe we can change what those rules are so it's a little bit more strict, because I think most chains, honestly, the slashing rules are pretty meaningless. But maybe that as VP grows, there's higher risk, right? Or at least for the delegator or something similar to that. You could probably do a combination of these things to be able to try to even that out. I don't know if it gets past the free shit thing, because you might say, I don't care, but it might look at, instead of people just say, doesn't matter, nothing here makes a difference, I'm just going to delegate it all to this free shit validator. Maybe somebody says, well, what's the minimum? Well, maybe I'll put 100 of the X on there, and then maybe I need to be more thoughtful about where I'm putting these other tokens, right?
That's interesting, because we have seen, Binance and I think a couple of big other ones get slashed on, like, Cosmos Hub. And there was another one recently that was a pretty big slash out of nowhere. So, yeah, I think that's an interesting approach, whether it's there was a really big one lately. It was a double sign over on CheckD, Everstake. It was during T Central.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And they double signed, and like the message that went out through the CheckD Discord didn't even say it was a double sign. They just said due to a technical error, they would be gifting back 5% to their delegators and like to go resake them. They got Tombstone. They double signed. They screwed up somewhere. I mean, if any of us did that, we would be crucified.
Validator upgrade, redelegate here.
Yeah, exactly.
We're upgrading.
And Everstake is massive. So
right.
We're changing our validator keys because we're upgrading.
We're upgrading keys. Please redelegate here.
Yeah, just move all your stuff, and you'll get your 5% that you lost back.
That's right. Yeah,
as a bonus.
And a short bonus.
That was literally the message. Like, I should copy paste it right now. It was in the CheckD Discord as an official notice from CheckD. It was funny.
So, Ghost, I have a question for you. So, one of the groups I'm sitting in on, maybe attending, it's also kind of like a validator structures, Validator Commons, which I know we've talked about here, and it's been in the show notes here previously. And they're working a little bit closer with the with foundations, right? And actual chain ownership, if you want. I don't know, maybe a bad project ownership, whatever it is, right? And they're trying to figure out more from the governance structure of what a foundation has ownership of after a chain is launched versus maybe the validator set or the delegators, to say maybe based on direction or the types of things. And it's kind of like, I think it might be paraphrasing here a little bit, but it started a bit as what that balance is between foundation control and like the natural direction of what a delegated group of individuals would say, right? Where we want to be able to go with this. So from that perspective, and kind of as we've talked a little bit with them, that idea of, have you guys talked about that at all in terms of like the role of, say, foundation delegations in this and trying to help chains make better decisions on? I know this is Null's favorite topic, is foundation delegation, but is there anything, have you guys had that conversation also within this group to say, what is the role of the chain have with this?
So there hasn't been, as far as I've seen, too much talk about that. There are, we do actually have interest from the ICF. We do have, I think, let me see, there are like 8 or 10 different advisory groups. So looking at the group right now, 20 different advisors. A couple of them are on the same teams, of course. So we are working with that. In terms of Validator Commons, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Thyborg was actually in contact with them.
Yes.
Don't quote me on that.
No, you're right. You're right.
Okay. And then what else? Let's see. So I mean, that's an avenue that's it hasn't been talked about as much in this Discord, but I believe that there's no reason we couldn't collaborate and bring the two groups together to merge both ideas and go, okay, how can we implement this? Whether 10 different teams make their own interfaces or services, whatever, to provide to the community, or only a few do, but at least to gather this data, aggregate it, and say, okay, it's all available here.
And do you think like, say, the Evmos team has any obligation or ownership of the validator structure and say basically what that Nakamoto coefficient is? So like if osmosis jumps from, what was it, like 17, it jumped down to like 6 or something. It was something
50,
like that, right?
I heard it was 15 to 6. Yeah. So I do, to a degree.
Hang on, just a correction there. I think they changed the way it was calculated. Someone mentioned.
Yeah, I saw a revision. It was like 7 to 6 or 7 to 5 or something like that. But
let's say in Evmos it's 6 right now, or Kava it's 2. Like what ownership
was like 3? Yeah,
SIFT like 3. What ownership do you think those what ownership does the chain have in terms of taking action on that, or what can they do, or is it like what is in their interest to do that?
Well, if it's foundation delegations going out that are literally pumping people to the top, then yeah, there is. I feel like there's responsibility there because they're putting their own chain at risk by doing so.
Yeah,
they're centralizing it themselves. For example, and we literally have a delegation from AssetMantle, so this is not a knock on them. But if you look at their chain, it's the top. Last time I checked, the top 4 nodes were all foundation nodes, and they control over 50%.
So Adam Burke says, where can I go to see foundation delegations for each chain? Is there a list with each foundation's wallet address in it? Not that I know of, Adam.
That's actually a great question, and something this is where like community researchers or just people analyzing things, putting things together, these Twitter threads, breaking stuff down and tracking things down. We need more people to do this stuff and put the time in on that, and having these interfaces up would be valuable. I guarantee there would be foundations or teams or projects that would either be willing to put up grants, some sort of, DAO.
Here's a grant to dogs and bullets, lol.
Well, yeah, right. Well, you know what I mean, though. But someone to full-time literally go and gather this data, provide it to the community, and say, hey, these are the live, legit metrics. Do what you will with them, but this is the accurate data.
Cal says AssetMantle went down because of the
and he's 100% correct. Yeah, the top 4 nodes right now on AssetMantle are all foundation nodes. Right now, between them, all 4 of them, except for one, have 9.9% of the VP.
Yep.
So that's literally practically 40%. So. And the chain did go down before because they didn't upgrade their nodes or something happened with them. I can't remember exactly, but everyone else in the set did their thing, and we're one of the teams in the set, and they just chain was like halted until they took care of business.
And that's different too. Like, there's not a ton of chains that run their own foundation nodes, right? I mean, they obviously take foundation delegation, but not that many.
And it started out worse than this. It was higher than 50%. And they said that over time they'd be phasing out. But if you look at it, it's 100% commission on all 4 nodes.
Yeah.
It's just been an interesting approach. And like I said, I'm not trying to knock on them. We get a foundation delegation from them. But at the same time, this is still not something that I support, are these foundation nodes controlling all this VP. I don't think that's beneficial to the network at all. They mentioned that it was a stability, to help stabilize the network, but it's been out for a while now.
Yeah. It's a funny thing, right? So not everybody who builds a blockchain is a blockchain guy, right? They don't necessarily fully understand all the nuances of a blockchain.
Right.
What some of these teams do know is that they've thought of a good product that they want to build, and they need a blockchain to support it, right? And Cosmos SDK makes that easy. Now, that comes with some, depending on where they're coming from and who they've talked to about this, it comes with some, preconceived notions about how to stabilize your blockchain and how to control your blockchain, right? Case in point is Firmachain. So when they launched, they had 5 foundation nodes, right, which basically controlled the network. And I had a foundation delegation, as did just about everybody else who's a Genesis validator. And I raised to them, I changed my my commission from 10% to 20%. And when they asked me, I said, well, you're my only staker and there's no one else using the network. And you guys are just soaking up all of the inflation with your foundation nodes. And I said, why in the fuck do you need them? And they said to me that, it's our, like, we believe that the stakers see that as a positive for the chain stability. And I talked to them quite a bit about it. And then they said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to, educate our community and talk to them and let them know that now that we've launched and we have all these good validators, that we're going to shut down all of our foundation nodes. And so what they ended up doing after some time was shutting down all of their foundation nodes around about the same time as when they were. So they kept a couple of them open, I think, to make sure that no validator got too much power. And then after some stake got spread around after they did the token swap from, I don't know, it was probably Ethereum or something to their blockchain through some sexes. Then they shut down the rest of them, and then they still delegated all of the foundation node tokens to other people. But the point is that they shut them down because, they had a different perspective from people who are involved in the network. So all I'm saying with that entirely long explanation is that they may think they're doing the right thing when they're not.
And yeah, I totally get that. And that's also why we, these past few osmosis proposals, you've seen, and AssetMantle was one of the tokens on the list of, tokens to be de-incentivized from osmosis, matching incentives. And they, reached out to us, asked us why we voted the way we did, and just said, look, for the health of osmosis itself, it's a separate chain. It has nothing to do with this. And at the same time, I truly believe that a chain should have some sort of like MVP or, something to show before they go and ask for money from osmosis. We were very happy to just give incentives to everybody over the past months. Anytime anyone asked, it pretty much got passed for almost every single LP. Didn't matter. We matched incentives. And now we see, the effects of that. And these cutbacks, while I think they're great, I think they're too little too late. But yeah,
I think we're going through the big reset at the moment in the Cosmos ecosystem from this mania bull that we had. Now, people realize that the money's not unlimited and you can't just keep bloody, giving it. Because, people take profits in a bull market, right? And eventually you get too much people taking profits and it just crushes the market. So, unfortunately, and I say this around, I feel like people don't like it that much, but at the end of the day, if you're taking a profit, it's coming out of someone else's pocket, right?
Every dollar in is a dollar out of someone else. Exactly. So whether that be, if it's some sort of shit coin with absolutely no purpose and people are speculating on price, right? Well, while they're speculating on service,
they're putting that into the black box, and then someone else is taking out the black box on the other side, and then basically, that. So it's. Some things have use, other things don't, right? Some things may be worth money in the future. Other things may not be worth money in the future. Projects that start a blockchain, release a token, hype the fucking thing, and then just take money out as people are putting money in. And people are putting money in and locking it into staking, and they're fucked. They can't get it out. And the people with big-ass bags who started the bloody network are sucking it out the other end, and they're taking everyone for a fucking ride. and it's painful to see. And without being crushed yourself, you can't get out there and scream it from the hilltops as well. I'll probably get crushed for saying it right now.
And
but
that's, one of our team members commented on a Twitter thread the other day about pretty much this exact same thing, is that as a validator, it's very hard to say something a lot of times without literally risking your own financial. I mean, this is a business. We're all running a business here. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Shut up and get in, or you be?
Yeah. Do you just basically take your compliance and just go along with the ride and go for it, or do you actually stand for something and say, okay, look, this isn't right. Even if it's going to cost me, I'm still going to say something because I just don't believe this is right. And more often than not, people tend to agree with you. And I feel like, being allowed to have your own opinion, even as a validator, and going out there and saying something is truly the way to go. Not everyone will agree with me, of course, on that, but at least in our team, we've all agreed that we're allowed to have our opinions, even if they don't even match our own internally, as long as we're not obviously going out and starting blatant wars for no reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you start a podcast.
What it is.
Or you start a podcast, you bitch about everything.
So Rama says, for those listening, it's good to see more validators coming out and speaking up for what's right. Yes, and I fully expect to get fucking crushed.
Honestly, after my last little AssetMantle, yeah, I know I get it, but at the end of the day, I just if something doesn't look right, then we're all in this together, and it's not just us. There's an entire massive community out there.
Callum says more balls on the table. So I guess and I've been talking about this for a while, and I am working on it in the background, but it's quite a complex thing. So what we're doing as a company is we're developing policies to work around, right? So one of our policies is network selection. And that goes, selection of the network goes along with the selection of the token that we want to, validate with. So what this means for us and what we hope it means to our delegators is that we have at least done, our policy is to at least do some sort of due diligence and only go into networks that we think may have a future. It's no guarantee. There's no big fucking stamp on there that says Null's guarantee that you're going to be Lambo in 2 weeks. But it does we want our brand to be associated with quality networks. So that might mean that we might have to shut down on a couple of networks as well once we release that. And that's, if that's what we have to do, then that's what we have to do. But we want to do a due diligence report on all of the networks that we join. And there's a lot of fucking labor involved with that. So that will mean that we won't have as much of a presence around the place. And it might be to our own detriment again. But I think it's important, and I'd like to see other people go down the same path.
It's tough though, because
Are you being
No, I was getting a really bad feedback noise. I thought that was me. I apologize. No, I said it was tough though, because a lot of times you don't know the potential of a network until round 2, round 3, round 4, and once you realize that, you're not getting in, right? Like you already. So I think I totally, number one, I totally agree with you, because I want to be able to. I'm really large on utility chains and chains that have kind of very purposeful purpose, not just maybe mixing tokens around. I mean, there's enough chains and there's enough bridges and LPs and this and that. How many ways can we mix the ingredients of this cake, right? But at some point, we got to bake something that actually has some really good utility and has some really strong value. And everything up between that point is giveaways and this and drops, and we're mixing all this shit and blah, 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 blah. But in the end, that's not sustainable. It's just not. You can't have it just be constantly be. And you can have some of those be successful, like osmosis, I think is going to be long-term successful, but there can't be there. I don't think there's enough to support 6 or 7 of those types of ideas. Right. So, but to that point, you don't really know what actually has good utility, because some things pivot and then it takes some time and the development team grows and blah, 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 blah. And either you have to take a I'm not saying it's a bad thing. If you take a Polkachoo approach, which I think is like get involved in early on everything and automate and be there, and then maybe get selective over time and say, I'm going to unduplicate that stuff. But at that point, you're kind of in it. So why would you? It's just money coming in. So the costs are there. Or you kind of start hedging bets and you recognize, which is what we do, which is you pick things that you think have the right team, the right involvement. Kind of you're making like an investment in an organization. And some of those are winners and some of those are losers, right? And just hope that a couple of those work out. And maybe you only need 2 or 3, right? Like I always look up to Frey at Needlecast. I mean, I'd say they're huge from a development perspective, but I think they run on 2 networks, right? And you can be successful running on 2 networks if you have the right approach to it. But I'm with you. I always get worried that I'm always picking not the right ones, or the ones I get into. It's not, and I'm not really necessarily picking. It's like sometimes you just luck out, right? You just happen to get into something where we missed out on Kujiro, which is because we weren't really big on the other side, right? So, but we missed out on that, which I think has good utility to it, and like I get it, but I don't know. It's tough to be a validator.
I 100% agree.
To sum up,
we've honestly literally just had this conversation last week at WhisperNode internally. It was, okay, we need to be more selective moving forward. We may not cut any existing chains, but we're absolutely setting guidelines and, what we're looking for in a team, what their timeline's looking like, what their team actually looks like, tokenomics, all of this sort of stuff. We're going to be a lot pickier moving forward. There's the spray and pray method, like you said, the Polkachoo, and he just is everywhere. And hey, it works.
It works. Does it very effectively. Yeah.
But it's also a lot of management depending on the size of your team. We're a small team, and I'm essentially the one managing pretty much the majority of our nodes most of the time. So I can only do so much. We have a few test nets running that look promising, but then again, it's just testnet. Those are, as a validator, I feel like testnets are kind of a great way to gauge something. You can run them cheaply, and then also you will probably get a delegation out of it. So, for anyone that's thinking about being a validator, testnets.
We are coming up on 90 minutes by -2 minutes. So, unless anyone's got some final thoughts they just want to put out there real quick, I'd say we probably wrap this up.
Did we solve governance? I think we solved it, right?
We always solve. Every week we solve governance.
Stamp it.
Solved everything.
Every week I get in trouble from the Frey for going over. So
he's not even here though.
Dad's angry. No, he was sending me a text. He's like,
wrap it up.
Just start playing music.
Like that old Chappelle skit with the wrap it up box. Wrap it up.
So thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for coming on, Ghost, man. I think it's productive talk about the whole issue with voting power and stuff on networks. There's not going to be one way to skin the cat, and it's not going to be an easy thing to tackle in the end. But I think with a multi-pronged approach, I think we can find a way there eventually. Just lots of people need to have a say on it, and we need to do it the right way without penalising people who also just want to sign blocks. So, in any case, thanks to our 5 viewers for coming to watch us today. We really must figure out how in the fuck to get more viewers because, I think people need to hear what we've got to say, because I think what we've got to say is important.
To be fair, our YouTube views are go up, and our podcast is doing really well. So there are people. Just the live piece is not that is whatever. Who cares? We get the.
I have ideas, and I'd be willing to come on more often. So
free shit.
Can maybe
NFT drop.
No, totally, man. No, just so it.
I got some free servers to anyone who wants to watch.
Yeah, right. I got a Contabo for you.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming.